Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We have another amazing guest for you today. We have Femi Openaye. He's a UK native with a background in law and investment banking who has been residing in Asia since 2010 and in Bali since March of 2020. He co-founded Wanderlux, a wellness travel curator specializing in bespoke retreats for relaxation, reflection, and personal growth. Femi, welcome to the show.
Hi there, Chris. Thank you for having me.
We're very happy to have you, and I'm very excited to dig into this with you. But as you know, we do like to have an icebreaker on this show, and today your question was, which cartoon character do you resonate with the most, and why?
That's an interesting one. I would have to say Batman, perhaps. I guess he's a cartoon character. I remember watching the Batman. I'm 44, so Batman in the 80s, very different from the way he is today. But the Batman today is he's a very dark character, which I would say I am myself. Well, he has a darkness to him, although he does a lot of good things. And, he's also a loner. So I would describe myself as that.
That makes sense. I like Batman as a choice. Sort of a strong anti-hero. Yeah, I like him.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. Skillet. So, yeah, I'd go with that
okay,
choice.
excellent. So, and before we get too much further into the show, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to be where you are today?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, I'm 44. So my journey has been pretty long. It seems like, looking back, my parents are originally Nigerian, but I was born and raised in the UK. My father is a doctor, so I was always expected to go into the medical profession, or at least into some kind of professional endeavor. Um, in fact, my I come from a long line of doctors, actually, but I decided to go for law instead because I wasn't good at medicine. I wasn't good at I wasn't good at science, and I wasn't good at any of the maybe engineering, anything like that. So I chose something that I thought was going to be easy. Went into law, hated it. Went into investment banking as well, hated it too. And I figured it was law and investment banking that was a problem. So I left the corporate world and I became an entrepreneur. And it was only later realizing that actually it wasn't law, it wasn't banking, it wasn't the corporate world, it was always me. And that's what I've been working on in the last 10 years to get to the point, to get to the point where I am comfortable with myself, honest with myself, and I'm going in the direction that I want my life to go in.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. I'm curious. So you realized that law and investment banking weren't for you. What was there any real definitive moment where you really realized that, or was it just in general?
Always been maybe the best way to describe it is with unhappy with the way or the direction that my life was going in. So I didn't fit in school. I hated school. Didn't particularly enjoy going to law school either. When I got into the professional world as well, I remember always having a conversation with my mum. And I remember saying to her, I was like, man, I hate this. It's so boring. My mom would always say to me, she's like, life is boring. Work is boring. And so I started to think that there was something wrong with me. And I endured it for so long. Then eventually in 2009, I have to say I hated my job. Like I said, in 2009, I was actually at the pinnacle of my career. I got offered a job as to train as a lawyer within an investment bank. Or anyone who works or who wants to do training in the UK as a lawyer would understand that training within an investment bank is actually it's very difficult to come by. And that's why I would say I was really at the peak. So I got this verbal offer from my manager, and I'm sure there were lots of talks in the background as to hiring me full time. But then the financial crisis came around, and I lost my job. And actually around that was how there was this 2 week period where I was trying to get back into investment banking, even though I hated it, but I didn't know what I was to do. But I was actually suicidal for that point in time because I just didn't achieve that goal. And so for that 2 week period, I was living on the third floor in this apartment in London. And there was this thought that was always kept coming to the forefront. And it was, okay, at some point, I'm just going to jump out the window. All right. That was always at the forefront of my mind. And the only thing that really saved me at that point was, would be so exhausted in the afternoon after trying to apply for jobs and not getting anything that I'd fall asleep. Right. Um, Unfortunately, I never spoke to anyone about this kind of issue. After about 2 weeks, I was like, look, I can't go on like this. I need to figure this out. And that's when I had this moment of clarity where I was like, look, I hate being in this position so much. It would be really weird if I were to commit suicide. And the reason is for me trying to get back into a profession or a job that I hated. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to find the next thing I can get. So I started selling. I got a job where I was earning something like 60. It was about $60 a week. I mean, it was that small. So I actually went from the pinnacle of my career to really rock bottom. And then in order to get back up, I was like, I'm just going to take any job. It got me out of the house. I wasn't earning a lot of money. But I think that was really one of the catalysts that led me to believe that, look, I needed to get out of corporate. I need to get out of investment banking and just rethinking the direction that I wanted to go with my life.
Well, it's certainly quite a story. Thank you for sharing that. And so I mean, obviously these challenges have been, every journey has its challenges, and you've actually gone on to co-found, a successful company, and you're creating another one in the process of creating another one now. What do you think was the biggest challenge you had to overcome?
So, I mean, I believe that the biggest challenge that I had to overcome, and maybe that most people need to overcome, is to stop living other people's lives, and to find out what they authentically want to do, and start working towards that. Now, I think that it sounds very simple, and there are probably a lot of people that will give the same advice. But the challenge is actually getting there and getting there authentically, right? Because in many respects, we are programmed to do what we're doing, right? So, like I said, I mean, my father was a doctor. I was like, I'm not going to do medicine, but I didn't really stray that far because I was like, okay, I'm going to become a lawyer. And then even after I left that, I didn't really stray that far. I went into investment banking, right? So that was really my challenge. It was figuring out exactly what I wanted to do with my life. And there was another turning point in 2011. And by that time, I was actually in Hong Kong, and my my parents came to visit me. And I can actually pinpoint these dates because my father asked me a question at that time. And he said to me, the question was, what do you want? And I was stumped. I couldn't answer the question because I had no idea. So I left and I went and I started writing a blog. This is well before ChatGPT. So this was me writing and editing it myself. And the first blog was titled, What Do You Want? And there were three things. The first one was to start writing a blog. The second one was to quit the corporate and to get a different job. And then the third one, I can't quite remember, but that was a catalyst in my journey to start going in the right direction. And I really think that that is the challenge for everyone. But I think the difference with me was that I was writing with the intention of not showing it to anyone. Right. And I think that's the only time that people can really be authentic is, okay, no one is going to question me about this particular decision. And it was just, yeah, it came from the heart. And that's when I started this process of getting out of the corporate world and actually finding some way to where I needed to get to. I have to say, I'm still on that journey. 13 years later, it's something that is ongoing and something I'm always, always trying to figure out this concept of being authentic.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that that many of us have an issue with because there are many different teachings out there, many different philosophers, many different psychologists too that they say that we all wear masks. I mean, this is something that is just ingrained into us in our societies. I mean, we have, we're one way when we're at home, we're another way when we're with friends, we're another way when we're out in out in public, and we're another way when we're working with, within a company. And the more masks that you have, it's not that you're trying to be unauthentic, but when we take away things from our personalities and we repress them, I mean, we are being unauthentic. And if you're right, I mean, if you can find a way to be authentic in every single scenario and just use that one mask, which is, no mask, well, one mask or no mask, I don't know what you want to call it, then you'll actually be a lot more successful in life and a lot.
You can, you certainly got, yeah, perhaps a lot of the answer to what happened. I don't know. I mean, I really don't have all of the answers. Like Kanye West said, you ain't got the answers, right? But I think that is always, I think that's an ongoing challenge for everyone, right? Because I was listening to a podcast with Theo Vaughn the other day, and it was a doctor on there, Dr. Gabor Mate, I believe his name is. And he was saying that there were two things that people on their deathbed regret, and the first one is inauthenticity, right? So living someone else's life, or some version of life that someone else wants them to lead. And then the second one was substituting emotions, right? So if you're annoyed or you're unhappy, you go out into the world and you put on this mask and you pretend to be happy. And there's so many people who do that, right? Because people are like, wow, I was just speaking to him the other day, and you're saying he committed suicide? What? He's not that kind of person. But I believe a lot of people do that. A lot of people are in that boat, right? Living in this perpetual state of unhappiness. But, we don't know what else to do.
No, and that's very right. I mean, it happens a lot, right? We have that. It's almost like a social rule, right? When somebody asks you how you're doing, the automatic answer is almost always, I'm fine, or oh, it's all good. You know? So,
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just digging into that a little bit. Um, circling back to procrastination, how would you define that, and what does it mean to you personally?
I mean, I think procrastination is, ties into what we've been talking about, right? It's this desire, this feeling that, okay, I can't do it today, I will do it tomorrow, right? I can't be authentic today, I'll be authentic tomorrow. Or once A happens, then I will become authentic. Or once I get this a certain amount of money, once I become a millionaire, once I become famous, once I get this girl, once I get married, right? People say that all the time. But I mean, if you look back through history, I mean, there've been a slew of rich and famous people who have ended up committing suicide, right? I mean, there's tons of them, and so we know that money. I think the equation is something like once you get over 150,000 per annum, and I think that's US dollars, it doesn't make you any happier, right? I mean, that's a lot of money, right, to a lot of people. But, I mean, I think people need to focus on being happy in the moment, being more present. And again, these are just words. Everyone can say them. But actually getting there is difficult because we've been programmed to be this way. right? I notice it because in 20, in 2017, I was back in London, and I was working from home as I normally do. And I was raising my nephew. So he was always there. I would, bathe him, change him, feed him, right? And I saw this child, because most children are like that, right? They're playful, they're running around, they've got all of this energy. And then as time goes on and people get older and older, they're like, no, put that down. Don't do that. Don't go there, right? And you just notice how, that burst of energy that children have, it just slowly goes inwards, right? And gets locked up somewhere, right? And I think that is that is the real the real crux in procrastination, right? Going back into that darkness, right? And seeing what you've locked away, right? Because I think if you look at the works of Carl Jung, right, he talks about integrating the shadow, right? So as a child, right, all of these when your mom tells you don't run around, don't do this, don't do that, you don't just and she's the one that's going to feed you. And so therefore you have to listen to her. But you don't just lock away your naughtiness, you not lock away a lot of creativity as well. Right. And the challenge is to go into that darkness and bring out all of creativity, everything that makes you unique, right? And separates you. And that is the real challenge. I mean, look, I'm in Bangkok at the moment, and I walked into a 7-Eleven, and there was this kid. I mean, she must have been about 5 years old. She's running around, she's shouting, she's screaming. I was laughing because I was like, look, that's how all of us are really meant to be. She had her shoes off, she was throwing it there, she was shouting at everyone. She didn't care, right? And I think that is the challenge of getting back to some form of happiness, of joy, of energy. We just, we get tied up in a lot of things. I was talking about my all of my jobs. I need to make money. I need to stay in shape. I need to get married. I need to go to university, right? We get tied up in all of that, and we get away we procrastinate on getting back to that happiness.
And so what would be your secret sauce to kind of starting that process? Because it can seem daunting, and one of the things that you're gonna get, I went through this myself, is that, when somebody asks you what you want, you don't know. So in your opinion, or your method, how does somebody start to even figure out what they want if all they've been doing is listening to everyone?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think it's very challenging. Like I said, I think a lot of it comes down to, is because we are programmed, right? I mean, there are a lot of layers of programming that go into us, to make us, adults. And so, like I said, I mean, I think a lot of it is buried deep inside us, right? All of this authenticity, who we truly are, right? And I think the challenge is going to dig deep and find out what that is. And one of the methods that I would recommend is writing down, right? But you're writing with the intention of not showing it to anyone, right? And you're more likely to be honest about it. And I've done that quite a lot throughout my life, just writing things down. Now, bear in mind, these lists are going to change over time, right? Because I think at one point I wanted to quit corporate and go into international development, right? That was on my list of 3 things. I also wanted a blog. I don't write. I don't write to publish anymore, right? Well, actually, one of the things that I should mention is that I made this blog publicly available to my friends and family. And I remember one of my friends saying to me, he said to me, he was like, man, your blog is really depressing, right? Because that's how I felt, right? And that the writing gave me an avenue, to be honest. And I was feeling depressed, right? And I think if someone, when someone shows you who they are, then you should believe them, right? Because, well, anyway, I guess the point is I think writing is a good way to get back to that. But writing with the intention of that it's just for you and for no one else. And then you can figure out later on how to get there. But really, you need to figure out in your mind where you are, who you are, what you want.
Well, that's certainly one way to do it. So just get in that state of flow and just write down anything, and don't even worry about structure or anything. Just get it all out there on a piece of paper.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, that there are other methods. So I mean, throughout my journey, I've had therapists, right? I mean, I've told I recommended a therapist to a friend of mine recently, and he laughed and he was like, "I'm not crazy," and I was like, "Dude, it's a therapist. He's just someone to talk to, right?" And the good thing about that, if you have a good therapist, right, a therapist is trained to listen, right? A good therapist is trained to listen to what you want, right? Because most of the time when someone is talking, because we're not trained to actively listen to people, right? Most of the time we're talking and then we're waiting for the other person to finish so I can get my point across and I can dominate them, right? But a good therapist is actually there to listen to you, figure out, ask some some open questions to get to the root of the issue, right? And sometimes just talking to someone who has been trained to listen is extremely
Oh,
helpful.
for sure, I absolutely agree. There's a big stigma still. I think there's less of a stigma since COVID, because everybody, we're talking about mental health now, but
Yeah.
that stigma still exists. Oh, I don't want to go to a therapist or a coach or ask anybody for help because then I look weak. But even coaches have coaches and therapists have therapists.
I mean, look, some of the best athletes in the world have coaches. I mean, look at LeBron, right? I mean, he's had a coach for 20 years, actually, probably even longer than that, right? So I think that's what people should always keep in mind is the people that perform at the highest levels always have a coach. They always have someone to talk to and train them. Kobe Bryant, I mean, I'm talking about athletes here, but even your top CEOs, politicians, all of them have a coach. All of them have mentors, right? That's another, right? Not less similar, right? So coach, therapist, mentor, right? All of these things, right? But it has to be the right one because there are a lot of people that claim to be coaches these days that aren't in fact coaches. They don't have that right training. They're not trained to listen. Maybe they took a 5-hour course on Udemy. Not that Udemy is not a good platform, but you want someone that is experienced and not someone that is also trying to push their will onto you, right? I
And
think those things are very
you
important.
hit a very important aspect there. I mean, that you're right. The market is inundated right now. It's very important to remember too that if somebody's under the name of a coach, the saying is, you know, uh, a beginner coach gives novice advice. A good coach gives good advice. An expert coach gives expert advice, but the master coach gives no advice.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that is because, like I was saying before, I mean, all of us have wisdom, right? But that wisdom is locked away, right? I mean, and again, most of the stuff that I'm saying is psychology 101, right? Because I've read a lot of Carl Jung, right? And again, maybe that's another tip, right? Just studying psychology. And the reason I studied it was to learn about myself. Okay, so why am I doing that? Why am I thinking that? Am I projecting? I say, all right, this person is like this, but am I projecting what is within me onto that person? Right? All of these different things, right? And actually, that can go both ways. So you can project both negative and positive things onto other people. So, oh my goodness, this guy's such a great speaker. I can never do what he does, right? You're projecting your positivity onto someone else. Oh, this person is very successful. I can never be successful, right? all of these things. Like I said, all of this energy is within us because all of the, as I travel all over the world, I see all of these kids and they're all the same. They're all running around. They never listen to their parents. They don't care what their parents think. Right? I mean, you could have the king walk in, right? The king, and everyone is bowing and they're afraid. And this kid is just running around. He probably goes and he steps on the king's shoe and he's like throwing mud at people because all of this is it's still it's locked inside us. But like I said, all of this is it's locked in the shadow. And the only reason it's called a shadow is because it's outside our field of vision. So it's nothing negative, right? It is just like your blind spot. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. So when you're reversing your car, right? There's a field of vision you just cannot see, and that is the shadow. And the the challenge is to look within, explore the shadow, and start to bring out all of these positive. There are negative aspects in there as well, but you want to integrate those. Because those negative aspects are controlling aspects of your life without you realizing. So you need to integrate your shadow so that you can bring out a lot of creativity and perhaps gifts that you've
Yeah,
hidden
and
from the world.
many, it is all about really looking inward, but doing that work or it's referred to as shadow work a lot too. But it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. So a lot of people just
Yep.
I don't blame anybody for not maybe not necessarily thinking about going there. Um, but so what do you do if somebody says they really don't want to go there? What would your advice to them?
Well, I mean, I go back to the book that that I was referring to. So this Dr. Gabor Mate, when he was speaking to Theo Vaughn, right? The comedian, he was on his podcast, right? It was a book written by a nurse, right? And she took care of patients who were passing away, right? And the thing is, they knew that they were going to, right? They knew that the end was coming at some point, right? They knew, right? It was inevitable. So they had the good fortune of thinking, right, about all of the things that they should have done and they wish they had done. And there were two things. I mean, the two top things were, I wish I hadn't, I wish I'd just been myself, right? I just wish I'd been myself. And I guess the other one that really ties closely into that is, I wish I didn't substitute my emotions. When I was angry with someone, I wish I just was angry, right? If I was happy, I wish I could have just expressed it. If I felt this, right? And I would say that, that is the reason why you need to stop procrastinating. And like I said, I mean, these things are easy to say, and I'm saying them, but there's still a lot of work for me to do, right? I mean, I was having a conversation with a friend today, and I really wanted to say what was on my mind. I really did, but I just couldn't, right? Because I was embarrassed, right? I really wanted to say it, but I was just too embarrassed. And so I'm always working on it myself, but each time. So I'm like, okay, I couldn't do it this time. Okay, maybe I can do it next time. Right. It's always the challenge. And maybe at some point I'm gonna look back. In fact, am I gonna look back one day and regret it? Right? Because perhaps that could have deepened our friendship. Right. And I think that is the challenge. I mean, what is the depth of your life? Right? I mean, how honest are you? How honest are you with yourself, with people around you? And maybe if I'd said to him, "Look, this is what is going on," then
Hmm.
maybe it would have brought us
Yeah,
closer.
you're right about that for sure. What a lot of times, we put up those masks though too because sometimes there's that fear that we don't want to potentially damage that image or friendship or whatever it might be, right? So we just need to go ahead and just understand that they're there to support us as well. Femi, thank you so much for being on the show, and to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in once again. And just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and be that inspiration and motivation for somewhere else. And see you again next time.